Everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. We have a fairly hefty agenda to get through, so we'll look to move through things as swiftly as possible. Just to give advance notice, I will be varying the order of the items in the agenda, as we have Pauline and Laura with us from Forth Valley College for the growth deal. They have a further meeting to go to later this morning, so once we go through, get to the rolling action log, we'll go to the growth deal, Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal first, and then we'll follow the rest of the agenda as is. But I'll firstly ask if there's any apologies.
No, Convener, there are no apologies submitted.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest in any item on this morning's agenda? No, thank you. We move to the minute of the executive held on the 12th of September. Are we happy to agree? Any questions on the minute? No, okay, thank you. Item 4 is the rolling action log, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log records the decisions of the executive where those require reports back, and just gives further information on the progress on those reports coming. The rolling action log is up to date as far as I can see. It's available to members for questions.
Are there any questions related to the rolling action log? No, we'll move into our agenda proper. And the first item, as I've indicated, is the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal. We take the papers as read, therefore I'll open up to questions. I've got a couple which I'm going to use the chair's privilege to ask. Is about the additional 10 million that was received from UK government, what that is likely to be used for, and some more information around the Skills Academy and how that will fit in with the need to support the recent announcements in Grangemouth following the announcements from INEOS.
Good morning, Convener. The additional £10 million from the UK government is to be focused on energy and the transition of the Grangemouth complex. And in relation to the skills project, I have Pauline and Laura here who can perhaps add how they are supporting the workforce at Grangemouth.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. Hi there, I'm Pauline Jackson. I hope everyone can hear me and the people joining us on Teams as well. Yeah, I suppose it's just to distinguish between the two projects, because the Skills Transition Centre is our Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal project, while we're working with the Scottish Government and UK Government at the moment, jointly with our partners in PACE and also Falkirk Council's Employment and Training Unit on developing a response to the refinery closure. So while they're aligned, they are quite separate, because the Skills Transition Centre is a 10-year longer term project looking at how we equip for the future, whereas there's a very immediate need in terms of the Petro INEOS closure. So we've had several meetings, as I said, with Scottish and UK government reps. We're looking at securing some funding along with our colleagues in the Council Employment and Training Unit, working closely with PACE, because it really needs a collaborative approach, looking at how we can work with the employees and looking at what skills they need in terms of making that transition either into new jobs within a similar sector or jobs within a completely different sector. So we're looking at a package of short commercial 2-3 day courses and also condensed what we would call higher national certificate provision, which would be condensed in a shorter period. So giving those employees that sense that we're all working together and we're trying to secure the best outcome, and hopefully the key aim is also to retain that skills base within the area. We don't want people to move away. We know that a lot of people at the refinery work locally, not necessarily all within Grangemouth, but across Forth Valley. So you want to retain that skills base as much as we can within the area. but the two projects are aligned but are distinct. If that helps, does that answer?
That's absolutely helpful. I think it was just to be able to make that distinction between the two projects, but that there is an interlink there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that, Pauline. Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. It was very interesting in Parliament to hear Ed Miliband talk about Operation Willow. Could you expand on that for us? As obviously the situation in Grangemouth is dire and there is a great concern.
Okay. Right, sorry, can everybody hear me? Okay.
No, really.
Oh, sorry, I'll move this. Sorry, I'm not used to dealing with microphones. I can answer that to an extent. The college is not directly involved in Project Willow, but we are part of the Grangemouth Future Industry Boards. So we have been attending meetings. Project Willow's been led, it's jointly led by Scottish Enterprise and INEOS, and they're being supported by consultants. So my understanding again is that Project Willow is a longer term approach to looking at the Grangemouth site. It's a kind of feasibility stage just now, but I'm sure if you wanted more information, I could give you the contact within Scottish Enterprise for that. But as I said, we're not directly involved, but obviously we're aware of Project Willow and its development at the moment.
And is the college putting forward retraining courses at present? Because somewhere down the line means people are only working for a long time.
In terms of the proposal for the refinery closure, we have to be careful in terms of the consultation with the employees is currently taking place. So there's a number of factors that we've got to just almost not take a step back, but work with the business and with our other partners. There's, as I said, there's PACE, who are the key organisation that would go in and support those employees in the first instance. And we're looking at a package of skills. We've had a meeting with union representatives from Unite, so they fully back our proposals in terms of the skills package that we are proposing to offer. We can't start delivering that package until we know the full scale in terms of the numbers of employees. We've got some of that information, but not all of it. And also we need to know the skills background, like what are the skills needs, what are the skills gaps. So we can't really implement those plans until we have that information. But what we've done is put a package, a proposal together to enable us to access additional funding, because we can't deliver this sort of scale of additional skills without funding. So that the two things need to come together, but we're doing as much background work as we possibly can, so that when those employees need our support, we'll be ready to do that with our partners.
So do you envisage having a meeting with the local members who have to answer these questions to the public?
I don't think that's our responsibility, but I'll pass you to Paul.
Well, it's always good to be kept involved.
Mr. Kettrick.
Convener, there will be engagement across the council as we move forward with the transition of Grangemouth at various points, specifically on Project Willow. It's a £1.6 million consultancy and investigation work that's been commissioned, and that's to look at the transformation of Grangemouth to a clean energy hub, which will pick up things such as hydrogen, carbon capture, and new methods of energy production. That is basically accelerating at pace through GFIB, as Pauline mentions. Council is involved in that from a high level, whether it's through the growth deal, Green Freeport, and through our local engagement with both industry and both UK and Scottish governments. We do attend the GFIB, which has now been chaired by jointly by the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister. And so we're very closely aligned to the work that's ongoing. In terms of direct engagement with local members, that will be undertaken in the usual way as we would deal with council business.
Well, we still live in hope that a consortium will come forward, because it looks like a long, dry period with great uncertainty.
Can I just remind people this is questions and not statements? I've got Councillor Garner and I've got Councillor Nimmo.
Thank you, Convener. Paul, this will be for you. I know things are very fluid at the moment, but do we have a date yet for the signing of the growth deal? And another question on the back of that, well, sort of, what will be the next projects to come forward?
Convener, we don't have a specific date for the signing of the growth deal. It is likely to occur in the latter part of November as we put diaries together with the respective governments. What we have been told by both governments is we have to continue to progress at pace, and we have to act as if the actual formal signing has occurred. They have both approved the growth deal. It is just putting the signatures on the piece of paper, so they've told us to continue to progress at pace, and they both recognise the pace that we as a local authority and our partners have been moving on our growth deal. In terms of future projects to come, there is a number that are reaching to the full business case maturity stage. The next one is probably the Canal Centre in the new year, although that could be competing for second place with the college with the strategic sites, which is obviously focused on Grangemouth.
Thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. A couple of questions, probably for Paul. Paul, the additional £10 million that's coming from the UK government, how is that going to be administered, and who's responsible for managing it?
Convener, in a similar way to the existing growth deal, it will be managed through the outline business case, full business case process, and it will sit within our growth deal for investment alongside our other projects, and it may involve new projects emerging or additional support for existing projects that meet the criteria for energy.
Okay. Next question is in relation to the INEOS situation, Paul. There's just over 500 direct employees working at INEOS, but there's over 2,500 contractors involved on a daily basis. Are we going to be supporting everybody that works on this site, irrespective of whether they're direct employees or not?
Convener, I think as both UK, Scottish governments and the council officers have advised, and indeed our partners at the college and Skills Development Scotland, our intention is to support everybody directly affected by the closure of the Petros INEOS refinery. There is a huge number there that we may not be fully aware of at this stage, but we'll be certain to look at engage with as many people as possible to ensure that there's appropriate support across both the directly affected employees and the wider supply chain.
Bearing in mind the numbers that I've mentioned, does Falkirk Council have the resources to deal with this? It is a major issue, obviously.
Convener, I think it would be disingenuous to the wider collaborative working of all the partners. It isn't just the council, it is both national governments, it's Skills Development Scotland, it's the college, it's Scottish Enterprise, it's a whole range of partners who are involved in supporting the transition of Grangemouth, and in particular those employees and those of the supply chain that are affected.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Murtagh, I think you're still on mute. Can't hear you.
I had this issue yesterday as well. I take it off and it's still on there. You can hear me. I'm sure you're all very happy. Thank you. Apologies. As I was just saying, so as you mentioned, there's lots of different partners involved, and there's different parallel and interlinking projects. The Green Freeport, the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal, and the various other sort of subsidiaries and things that go off in terms of GFIB, etc. Are you confident that these different work streams, like you're saying how these things interlink and reporting it to us, but we know there's work obviously in Parliament and what GFIB are reporting in terms of developing a wider plan and potentially reporting early part of next year for the Just Transition. Are you confident that those agencies that are creating those plans are also integrating with the plans that we are putting in these parallel projects as well?
Convener, the short answer is yes. There is quite intensive engagement across all the partners to ensure that all our plans, whether it's growth deal, Green Freeport, the Just Transition work that's ongoing, the work of GFIB, are all working hand in glove. It's not to say there is not issues where there could be better communication, but we are at the early stages of the process, and where there is issues, we will always work collaboratively with partners to resolve them.
Thanks, Mr. Keswick. I think, I don't know if this would be possible or not, but one of the criticisms, obviously, in previous, inquiries at Parliament of GFIB was very much the kind of remit and structure and strategy that, there was lots of people coming to talk about things, but they weren't necessarily clear on the kind of delivery point or who was doing what. And I know that you've mentioned that it's now being chaired by the Minister and Cabinet Secretary. Is it possible perhaps to kind of have an easy understanding for all elected members, and something that could be made public about how these projects interline and where the lines of communication are? Because I think there is concern that perhaps the governance wasn't there previously, that there should have been, and we know where we are now. Can we have something which is sort of easily translatable and publicly shareable, do you think?
Convener, myself and colleagues would be happy to engage with counterparts at GFIB and arrange an elected member briefing if that would be useful.
Thanks, Convener. Also, just I don't know if I also confirm, I know it's down as the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal and very much not worth an amendment because that's what it is, but they could make clear that this obviously goes district-wide. It's not just about the areas in which the activity is created, it's about the benefit to the wider district of Falkirk and areas that we all represent that don't come under that bracket. I think it would just give a little bit of clarity, would be helpful to the public on that.
Okay, I don't think that was really a question, but I'll go to Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Garner asked my first question regarding the signed deal. My next question is, what will the Grangemouth Future Industry Board have in shaping this transition?
The revised scope and focus of GFIB under the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister, involving the partners, as I've mentioned, is very much driving the Just Transition. The GFIB also involves representation of industry, so they're going to be a key player in it. Will they be doing it all? No, but they'll certainly be looking at the coordination and ensuring that everybody's pulling in the same direction.
Thank you. Probably regarding training, while we move into new transition and new ways of working, will the college start training on these transitions, whether it be retraining or new young school leavers as well? Because it'll probably be a brand new industry for the area.
Hi there. Yes, I mean, the plan is to encompass all of that training. It's a 10-year project, so the transition will happen. It's not going to happen overnight. We know things are changing, so our plan is to do all of that training and also align that with the Just Transition. We're already taking some of the kit that we've bought in advance of the growth deal being signed. We've been able to trial some of that kit within a school setting. They had a STEM, a science, technology and engineering maths event. So being able to take some of the AR, the augmented reality kit that actually simulates some of the industry experiences. So we're able to take that out and trial it, because what we don't want to do with the Skills Transition Centre is buy an awful lot of equipment up front that then technology, these new industries are coming on stream at different times. Things are moving at pace, but also some things are moving slower than others. So we're phasing the project and also phasing the training delivery. We also have within the project, we've got a stakeholder steering group. I know it's another group, but it has representation from key stakeholders, industry, to ensure that the training and the skills delivery that we're planning aligns with trends, needs, gaps, and future technology as it comes on stream.
And just to probably note as well, when you mentioned about upskilling of, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, upskilling of existing workforce, it's that kind of pathway to either a new industry or the green kind of energy future skills that we're kind of looking to ensure that it's not just schools, it's all aspects with many different types and modes of training as well. So short courses, full-time courses, apprenticeships. So making sure that we look at the existing workforce and working with the stakeholder steering group to ensure that we fulfil the gaps that are needed for future skills.
You mentioned it a couple of questions ago regarding all this can happen, but funding needs to be in place. So I'm sure the funding will come forward for the training. Will that include the equipment that you need? That'll be included in the package?
Yeah, our growth deal proposal is split between capital for the kit and equipment, but also we're fortunate to have a revenue stream within our growth deal project as well. I think we're quite unique in the growth deal because mostly it's all capital. So we're able to do sort of recruitment of new staff if we need new staff in terms of delivery of training, but also we have to also reskill some of our existing staff because as new technology to deliver skills training comes on stream, then we need to ensure our staff have the competence and the capability to use that. You know, you can't just expect this kit and equipment to land in the college and then we can all use it. So we need to phase that in as well. But yes, we've got kit and also revenue for programme delivery.
Thank you. Probably my last question. I don't know who this is for.
Okay.
Obviously, Councillor Nimmell's on the board. What input?
Councillor Nimmell's on the Green Freeport.
All right, sorry. I knew it wouldn't make anybody answer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see no more. Sorry, Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. I've just got a list of questions. The first one is, how important are high-skilled jobs to the just transition in the Grangemouth and Falkirk area?
I think the short answer is they're very important. We already have a really highly skilled, fairly well paid workforce in Grangemouth. The intention would be to sustain that as much as possible and grow it, hopefully, as we move forward with the just transition.
And is there a risk that we could see a depopulation of this high-skilled workforce with the closure of the INEOS refinery?
Convener, that is certainly a risk that we would be looking to hope to mitigate against as much as possible, hence why the focus of attention of a number of key agencies in both national governments to try and mitigate that as much as possible.
One of the objectives that, one of the decisions that both UK and Scottish Government have made since is an extra £10 million each towards the growth deal. Will this be enough to mitigate the impact of the closure of the refinery?
Convener, I think the growth deal is only one of a number of mechanisms or tools in the box that will be being deployed to support the just transition of Grangemouth. We have £10 million extra from the UK government. The £10 million from the Scottish Government sits within the growth deal. Alongside it is the Greener Grangemouth project, both of which are very much going to help support that just transition. But I think it would be naive to suggest that £20 million is going to solve all our problems around Grangemouth, hence why these are just the tools that we have at hand at the moment. There will certainly be further wider discussions, I'm sure, at national, regional and local levels on further investment that's required as we progress forward.
I'm asking these questions because isn't there a risk that we are investing in this just transition but might not have the workforce that immediately can step in to do it because the workforce is going to be depopulating before these industries are ready?
Convener, whilst that is a risk, I think what we've set out with the Skills Transition Centre, the work that's ongoing through GFIB with industry, both national governments and with our partners, Skill Development Scotland and Scottish Enterprise, the intention is to try and avoid that as much as possible, ensure that we can redeploy the workforce into the new jobs that are being created. There's a lot of similar skills required. If you speak to industry, they will tell you there will still be huge demand for electrical engineers, mechanical engineers in the new industries, which are very much compatible with a lot of the jobs that they currently have.
Thanks, Paul. You mentioned the Skills Transition Centre as one of the tools, but in point 10 on page 345, it says there is a risk that the UK and Scottish governments may not accept the Skills Transition Centre full business case. Why would they may not accept it?
Convener, we always highlight that this as a risk because we are at the stage where it is a full business case that has to be submitted. This risk has been mitigated because our business cases all comply with HM Treasury's Green Book requirements for business cases. We've had an outline case that's been approved. We've had an outline business case that's been approved, and we'll be working closely with both governments to ensure that risk doesn't materialise.
I've got Mr. Benny that's wanting to come in, just supplement that if you don't mind.
Thank you, Convener. We make a particular point in our reports in the risk section of exploring every potential risk that could possibly take place so that we can reassure you as elected members that we have considered that proposal and then sought to mitigate it. So when we put something in a risk section, it isn't because we think it's going to happen, it's to evidence that we have thought and considered about every possible outcome, and that is the purpose of that reference. But as we sit here, there's no expectation that that's going to be the case. It's that we've thought about it.
Thanks, Malcolm and Paul. The final question, but it might have been answered there just by Malcolm, it's just regarding point 10.1. It says that there is a risk that projects within the GROW deal may not progress as quickly as desired or may not progress at all. Again, is that just taking into consideration?
Through you, Convener, yeah, exactly. Is it? In a way, probably my officers can sometimes get annoyed, but I'm saying to them we need to evidence in the risk section that every possibility and outcome has been explored.
Okay, final questions from Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. Mr. Kettrick has now covered the issues I was going to ask.
Right, thank you. Okay, we will go to...
Sorry, I have a supplementary question, if it's okay.
I'm really wanting to move on because I'm aware of the lady's time.
It's fairly important, you know.
Well, can you make it very brief, Councillor Spears?
Certainly, if you'll allow me. You're saying that you look at every risk. What's your experience in the oil industry?
Through you, Convener. Today's report is about the growth deal, so I'm not clear of the relevance of my knowledge and experience on the oil industry.
I think we've been discussing it for the last 15, 20 minutes.
But I've allowed a little levity on that, Councillor Spears, and that this is about the growth deal. It's not specifically around INEOS, it's much broader than that, but I have allowed a bit of levity on the questions in relation to that. I'm now going to move on and ask Councillor Garner to move the motion.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks to Paul, Malcolm, Colleen and Laura for answering all the questions, and some very pertinent questions there were from elected members. This is good news for all of Falkirk area, as was alluded to earlier. The report provides an update on the progress of the Falkirk Growth Deal and to seek committee approval to submit the full business case for the Skills Transition Centre to the UK and Scottish governments. Elected members will recollect in March 2024, Executive approved the submission of the full deal document to the UK and Scottish governments for approval. Signing was anticipated to take place on the 5th of June 2024. The approval and subsequent signing were delayed due to the UK government election, and we've heard that it looks like the end of November, hopefully that this will be finally signed off. In relation to the second recommendation, both the new UK government and Scottish government have intimated that they would like to rename the growth deal as the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal to reflect the investment being made and the importance of Grangemouth, given the recent announcement by PetroNS to close the refinery and move to an import and distribution facility. The growth deal funding previously approved consisted of contributions of £90 million from the UK and Scottish governments and Falkirk Council's contribution of £45 million towards the new town hall. Following the PetroNS announcement, the UK government has committed an additional £10 million to support future energy projects, which matches the Scottish Government's additional funding for green recovery projects. This funding is needed and appreciated, but in my opinion, both governments, especially the UK, could and should go a bit further considering the previous mentioned Grangemouth situation. The first project to progress to full business case, if we've heard, is the Skills Transition Centre, being led on by Forth Valley College, which has been allocated £4 million to support the state-of-art equipment to enable them to provide skills, development and training to meet the needs of emerging sectors and to transitioning of traditional industries. This project is estimated to deliver over £26 million in gross added value to the local economy and support over 1,000 students. I would like to commend the college and officers in progressing swiftly to full business stage. When approved, this will unlock the funding to deliver this existing programme of training and skills development. In summary, this is yet another key milestone for the growth deal and comes at an important time to support the renewal, regeneration and transition of our local economy, key business sectors and town centre regeneration. Happy to move the report, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I'll formally second. As there is no amendment, there's no debate, but I will give an opportunity for any members of the opposition parties and independents if they wish to comment on why there's no amendment being brought forward. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. We have no amendment to the report, but the detail and number of the questions will make clear that there are concerns that this has progressed timorously and effectively and efficiently. There are a lot of concerns about the future of the area, and that will continue to be the case. But the report in itself, we welcome the fact that it is moving forward, and we look forward to further reports on the progress.
Thank you. Any other member? No, I'll be happy to agree the report. Okay, thank you. Thank you to Pauline and Laura for coming along, and we'll just give a little minute or two for the changeover of officers. Okay, colleagues, we'll move into the next part of our agenda, but before we go into the suite of housing papers, I'm going to ask Mr Gillespie just to make a short statement, as there's been a lot of publicity and concerns raised in relation to the changes around emergency repairs. I just thought it'd be helpful to make a statement. I'm happy to take a couple of brief questions, but any detailed questions I would ask be directed to the service directly. Thank you.
Convener, thank you very much, and to the opportunity to update where we are. As members are aware, Scottish Parliament called a housing emergency on the 24th of May, and just recently Scottish Government produced figures of local national trends of homelessness. And within Falkirk, we have over 1,280 homeless cases at the present time. Falkirk accommodate 491 of those. The unfortunate part of that is there is 160 families with children. We are also at the same time of that 491 we're accommodating, which is a 10% rise in our figures from the previous years. This is a start that we don't want. We need to look at prioritising our most vulnerable, and we need to be seeing how we can do that as quickly and swiftly as possible. So, in collaboration with our colleagues, our colleagues within Place Services, a Falkirk approach has been decided. How can we minimise the disruption and making sure that we accommodate as quickly as possible? What therefore was happening, the decision took us to suspend all what we'll call reactive repairs that are not emergencies, moving all available staff from our in-house service provider, which is our building maintenance division, onto voids. They are the best people who know their properties. They're the best people that can turn these around as quickly and as swiftly as possible. The other factors that we're aware of at the present time is that we have just over 100 properties of new build properties being let in the near future, which is great news and that will help, but that also creates additional properties that will become vacant, and we want to be ahead of the game and stay ahead moving forward. We're also coming into a period where we also see significant rise in our void properties as well. Over the next 3 months we see rise. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we can accommodate everybody within the resources as much as possible. We appreciate that this will cause a lot of concern to our tenants and individuals. What we will say is we are still carrying out emergency repairs. We will respond to emergency situations if they happen, but we are asking our tenants to help us when, if it is a repair, it is an emergency repair. I appreciate this is a situation that nobody wants, but from a council and a housing perspective, we want to target all available resources, including housing resources as well, to speed up the amount of void properties to help those who are most vulnerable. And as you will see in a further report, we have had 30 plus breaches of unsuitable accommodation, which is unacceptable. We're not alone compared to other councils, so we're being very reactive in making sure that we target our most vulnerable. Thank you very much, Convener.
Okay, thank you. As I said, I've asked it to be very brief questions, detailed ones directly to the service. Councillor Spears and Councillor Bundy.
Thank you. I'll go first if it's okay, unless we're doing it in a duet. Would you recommend for councillors, hard-pressed councillors who are at the coalface, as to say, this council, put all their housing inquiries in through as emergencies? Because I've got people that are damp ceilings and you're saying, well, this isn't an emergency. They're going to go into a very cold winter, especially our old people, due to the policies that have been created in another parliament. What would you suggest we put stuff through us? Because I'm obviously not a qualified housing inspector, and I will try my very best for the people that come to me.
Okay, Mr Gillespie.
Convener, for yourself. I would ask, as always, as all local members do, is use common sense. We put out 17,000 letters to all tenants, and it's clearly defined what an emergency is required. If that falls within the emergency repair, our teams are there. Our colleagues within Place Services have put additional teams there just in case, if that is the issue. And also if we have other emergencies, like weather emergencies, appreciate that's come in. But as I asked before, and I pleaded that we use that part of common sense when repairs, because it is something that we are trying to target to deal with our most vulnerable. But if it's an emergency for health and safety, absolutely, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
I wouldn't question, sorry, I've got to answer that. I wouldn't question my common sense, but I am not a housing inspector.
It's questions only. Again, I'll remind you. Councillor Bundy.
Isn't there a risk that by pushing back repairs such as damp, that you might be using resources more in the future?
Convener, where it is. As I said, if it's an emergency, it will be assessed to make sure what is the most required. So if there is dampness or things like that, and there's a serious effect on health and safety, things like that, that would be classed as an emergency repair, Councillor. Things lights off, internal doors not shutting, floors, leaks that can be contained, that will be there until it gets. So we're trying our best to minimise that, but there will be exceptions to the rule, and we're doing this for the best possible intentions.
Thank you, but isn't there sometimes where it's better to tackle the problem at root to stop it spreading into a wash problem, which means the council spending more money?
That's always a risk, but for the period that we're talking about, we're not seeing that as a major risk going forward because of the good condition the majority of our properties are in.
Thank you, Councillor Redman.
Thanks. Just a couple of quick. I suppose the kind of basic one is, could you maybe just sort of define what would be an essential and then what might be a non-essential repair? Just in a bit more detail, please.
Okay. I think there's some good information on the website on that.
I was just without there is good information on the website. It's went to every single local member. I think members have also got a copy of that as well. There is also on the website frequently asked questions that I think will also help. So without me just paraphrasing, here's a couple. There is a full brief on there, Councillor.
So if members of the public want, they can go on the council's website and find it somewhere. The other question I had was, obviously, we've got a lot of people in temporary accommodation. That'll be costing, a lot of money to the HRA budget. Would you estimate if we can reduce that it will deliver a saving, which could maybe actually help us focus more on repairs rather than temporary housing?
Convener, for yourself, the homeless temporary accommodation is paid by the general fund, Councillor. It's not the HRA. So it's actually hitting the deficit number at the present time. So it'll be a reduction in the deficit of the council in regards to HRA because it's funded through the general fund, not the HRA.
That's still be positive. And then just I was wondering, it might be quite a broad question, but after the 3 months, how can we judge if this is a success or not?
Councillor, through yourself, Convener, through yourself, but by looking at the number of families and children that I have in homeless temporary accommodation, will certainly be merged in that, and the additional properties that we'll look to reduce. But all bearing in mind, though, we have got over 100 new build properties coming, so that will create additional voids, and we want to make sure that we're on top of that to our starting number than now, Councillor.
Thank you, Kerry. Cheers, bye.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Can we have a reassurance that this will be monitored closely and that there will be reports back on the progress to councillors during at appropriate points in the 3-month period? Because I think from the questions you're getting, it might be clear that there are concerns that this could slip into a permanent arrangement, and we don't want to see that happen.
Convener, happy to do that, and there's already, because this is a council approach, there is already looking to set up monthly or 2-weekly operational monthly updates of our position and the direction, bearing in mind, as I said, it's a full council. It's not just about the repair, it's the process as well from a housing perspective, making sure that we're getting there as early as possible, because it's quite clear as soon as we can get somebody in a fixed tenancy, it has great benefits to health and well-being.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kerr, and that will be our last question.
Thanks, Convener. What will stop people from moving from other bands to homeless to get a house quicker?
All our houses will be, sorry, Convener, for yourself, apologies. All houses will be through our application process that we have, and there has to be a change in circumstances. We're not changing the percentage of properties, so we still the 27.5% and 45% for starters, whereas members may recall in previous years we moved from the homeless number up to just under 70%. We're not doing this because we have to also appreciate that if we have home movers who are overcrowding that, there is still a benefit of moving these properties out with the ones that I've said that we're targeting to have a positive impact on the individual families as well.
So do we envisage anybody thinking that they're going to get a house quicker because they're homeless?
Convener, for yourself, I hope not, because that wouldn't be the spirit of there, and it's still the same 45%. We're not changing that, and as you're aware, there is a banding. You have to meet certain criteria for that banding, and if you're just moving on that banding, if everybody's in the same banding that's for that position, it then comes to how long you've been on the banding, who would be first. So it's went now, and because there is 11,000 people who are on our waiting list at the present time, my comfort is that they'll be near the end on that banding.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move into the local housing strategy, and I would ask people to please be focused on the papers and not return to the repairs, because I will stop people having had this opportunity, but I'll open it up now for questions in relation to the paper in front of us, which is the local housing strategy. Councillor Bowes, you've got some questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I know that the report refers to the new tenant and customer participation strategy being developed. How does this participation strategy link into the work of the local housing strategy, and how can tenants get involved?
Through you, convener. Thank you. So whilst the local housing strategy is a requirement for our statutory obligations, and we work together with the Health and Social Care Partnership to deliver these, there are elements whereby the tenant's voice, which is the new landlord forum that has been developed, it's an improved way for tenants to give us their views, and that is incorporated into certain priorities through the LHS. Thank you.
Thank you. A second question, and I'm assuming it's also going to you, Natalie. Can I ask you to advise council on, executive on challenges facing the increasing our housing supply at the moment?
Through you, convener. There are many challenges, particularly around the financial landscape. We have very high interest rates. So at the moment, the way that we fund our new build is extremely challenging. We have a reduction in grant available, albeit we are exploring alternative options. But at the moment, the challenges are real in terms of the financial costs for the new builds. In terms of affordable housing supply, generally, you'll be aware that our buybacks form a large part of increasing our housing supply. At the moment, the housing market is also impacting on our ability to purchase, because you'll see from the report there is a reduction in the number of homes available. And again, that's in part to do with the fact that people cannot afford to move on because of things like high cost of living, high mortgage interest rates. So there are some challenges that we need to be innovative and agile to adapt to. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. I've got a number of questions in relation to the local housing strategy. I made them available to officers in advance so they're well aware of them. The first question, Edinburgh City Council declared a housing emergency, quickly followed by the Scottish Government declaring a national housing emergency. The Scottish Government then slashed Falkirk Council's house building budget by approximately £6 million. What effect is this going to have on the 11,000 people currently on our housing waiting list?
Okay, through you, convener. So as with all available resources, we aim to maximise what we do with the grant that we have available. There will always be a flow of stock as people move into the area, people move out of the area, as people move on and as people's lifestyle and family situations change. So homelessness has always been a concern, and there always has been that flow of stock moving around as people's needs change. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the response. The next question is in relation to Brexit and construction costs. When do we expect this to level out as far as the construction sector is concerned?
Through you, convener. I wouldn't be able to comment on anything to do with the economy. What I can say is that we do not and are not seeing any reduction in construction costs. The market just now is still very buoyant, so therefore the demand is high, and as well as the construction cost. There's also, as you're aware, demands for tradespeople also, which can impact on our costs.
Okay, thanks for that as well. Now, in relation, you mentioned the council's buyback scheme. I'm just curious as to how we can expand this. Obviously, it's subject to funding being available. It's still the cheaper option rather than new build. So how can we try and prioritise that more and get more buybacks into the system?
Through you, convener. So at the moment, I couldn't commit to any expansion of the buyback scheme. If we were to do so, that would require a reprofiling of the housing investment plan. We are in discussion with Scottish Government, however, to request an uplift in terms of the amount of grant that we receive per property. So that's one way that we are approaching it. If we were to look at expanding the buyback scheme, then that's something we would report back to committee on.
Okay.
Thanks.
I look forward to that coming back to us. My last question is in relation to the local housing strategy, priority 6. Now that's headed up improving housing conditions, but as we've just heard, minor repairs are no longer a priority. How does this improve our general housing conditions?
Convener, I'll take this one if you don't mind, thank you. We're talking about the capital, obviously a lot of the capital investment, the new windows, the doors, the roofing, the rough casting, where we hit and support are most in need. Small repairs that I was talking about earlier are what I'm calling about things where it's adjusting, it's small, it's not things that have an impact on the structure or the home as a whole. But taking back to Councillor Bundy's answer earlier, if things do get that, we have emergency processes in place. So it will have minimum impact on what we're talking about here. These are the big projects and the big areas that we're talking about, kitchen refurbs, things like that as well, Councillor.
I'm sure the tenants will disagree with you in that respect, though, Kenny, because from the public opinion, but I'll leave it for the time being. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Could I just ask a very quick question in relation to the buybacks? I mean, it is my understanding that while the buybacks will increase the council housing stock, it won't help increase the overall availability of housing and that mixed tenure across the district. While it might maybe small numbers, but it still doesn't increase the number of houses that are available. I just wonder if you comment on that.
Yeah, so Falkirk has a particularly high volume of owner-occupier and a low level of private rented sector, so it makes our market even more challenging. What it does do, though, for me, it's very much around specific housing need. So it's property type that is often what the buyback can bring us and bring us really quickly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Most of the areas that we're getting gas are nearing completion. There's still one or two that's still to have that. And a lot of the questions that I got asked is when the programme is to actually went into the houses with them. Have we got a programme that we can share when it'll start and where it'll start? And
through you, Convener. Absolutely, you'll get some information to members. There was a members briefing, I think it was around summertime, providing some information, but I'll arrange to get an update to you. Thank you.
And my next question is on the case studies and regarding properties that have been lying for a while. And I'm sure each one of us have got some of these properties in their areas. Is it only steps to get them back? Is it just through the empties house officer that we can go through? Is there any other channels that we can get to get these homes back up in good order?
Through you, Convener. So it is through the Empty Homes Officer. That's the team that I would direct any of your constituents to, or if anyone had any concerns. The approach that we do take is very robust, and we do actually have a very low percentage of our homes that have been empty for longer than 2 years, which is below the national average. So we are intervening quickly and doing what we can to move properties along to increase the housing supply.
So the only way we know about these is when people come to us to alert us of them, because obviously it's a big area and one person can't go around and check every street.
Yeah, there are a range of ways that we are notified. That includes we're looking at the council tax register. It includes the housing officers being out in their patch. It includes what we do have is a target of carrying out 500 visits to empty homes across the area. That's the empty homes, so they see for themselves, and also raising awareness on the Empty Homes initiative and asking people to get in touch. So all of these approaches are to help us find out quickly about these homes. Thank you.
Okay. I've one more question, Convener, and it'll probably affect everybody here. But I don't know if it's for this report. If it's no, you just say it's not for this one. I've got a constituent at the moment who won't let us into their house. Their garden is no up to the standard that the council will expect. What processes can we get them to engage?
Okay, so it would depend on what the tenure type is, because I acknowledge you said it wasn't specific to this report. If it's a council property, then it is okay. So that would be through the housing officer. That would be the way that we would be looking to get access. There are a range of methods that we use to enable engagement. One of them is if someone's not engaging with us, then we would look at advising of an abandonment notice. And in my experience, that is a way in which people then do engage with us. There is obviously the opportunity for the garden to be maintained to a suitable standard and for the tenant to be recharged.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll pick off offline with you.
Okay, Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. Will there be a knock-on effect and these conditions apply to the housing associations?
Through you, Convener. Housing associations do have similar approaches to ourselves. They have a responsibility for managing their stock and their tenants, just as Falkirk Council do. Thank you.
Well, there is concern where housing associations regarding conditions, especially garden conditions.
I think that's not for today, Councillor Spears, and it's not part of this report.
Sorry, other councillors mentioned their constituents' concerns and you didn't say anything.
But that's not for this report. That's not a council responsibility for what the policies of the local housing association. There's no further questions. I'll therefore go to Councillor Bowes to move the report.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, Executive. Firstly, can I thank the senior officers and management who have produced the 3 reports for this meeting. However, I hope you'll join me in thanking every single employee in housing, especially those on the front line. These people work extremely hard, often going above and beyond the call of duty to serve the people of Falkirk. You have my deepest appreciation for all your efforts and what you do in a very challenging time. Thank you. Moving on to the first of these reports, the Local Housing Strategy 2023 to 2028. This report looks back at the progress in 23-24 of the Local Housing Strategy and plans to deal with the empty homes for the next 5 years. To give some context, Falkirk Council area has a high percentage of council housing and owner-occupiers. We have the second largest percentage of council housing stock in relation to its entire housing when it is compared with other local authorities in Scotland. We have a low percentage of vacant private and second homes. What does this mean in reality? The housing service in Falkirk has a vital role to play not only in housing and maintaining houses for our people, but improving energy efficiency in properties, supporting people, which I will touch on later, and leading by example in Scotland as a social landlord. Rather than me going on about the excellent work our housing department do, I will reiterate what others have said about this local housing strategy. The strategy has been described by the Scottish Government as a very strong local housing strategy and an exemplar of best practice. Additionally, the Housing Property Chamber has described our approach to monitoring private rented property conditions in regards to health and safety, heat and smoke detection, gas and electrical safety as innovative and best practice. They have actually adapted our processes as their best practice standard. Our housing department is more than bricks and mortar, and this report lays out the strategy we will take to support people in Falkirk in their lives, working with other services to ensure the best outcomes for the people. Housing, as we all know, is one of the key factors in the fight against poverty, and this, in my opinion, is one of the mainstays of this strategy. We have 69 actions laid out in the strategy. 9 have been completed and 60 are on target within the strategy. I welcome the following within the plan update and would like to pick out some of the items from 23-24 as follows. Working with education services to raise awareness and understanding amongst our young people on housing options so they are better prepared for moving into the housing market. 96% of council houses meet the energy efficiency standards for Scotland. Reductions in emissions of CO2 equivalent, as noted in the report, will help to make our housing stock more energy efficient. Therefore, our residents' homes are cheaper to heat, and this in turn helps them with fuel poverty. Training of frontline staff to address fuel poverty and to support people across to access fuel vouchers and cost of living support. The frontline staff are face-to-face with the people of Falkirk, and they are best placed to help the most vulnerable in our society. Preventing people from entering or falling into poverty, resulting in a financial gain to those in need in the Falkirk area of around £7.2 million in 23-24. This is a perfect example of cross-service approach to help people who are in or close to the poverty trap. The investments to help reduce energy bills with the new energy efficient treble glazing, windows, doors, heating systems will help all our tenants, especially pensioners. With them having been dealt a huge blow recently by the Labour government, we have removed the winter fuel payment to all pensioners with the exception of those on pension credit. A hoarding service in partnership with the Health and Social Care Partnership, allowing people to access emotional and practical support. This is a difficult and very sensitive area of work, assisting some of our most vulnerable people, and is most welcomed. Working on a new model for disabled adaptations to improve customer service and to speed up delivery of adaptations. Property checks and private lets, and working with the private sector to support becoming more sustainable. The private sector is a key ally in the housing market, and this sector supports a significant number of our residents. Launching a new deposit assistance scheme to support the people into private lets. Work to return empty properties back into the market. Since 2013, 673 empty homes have been returned to the housing market, but there's still around 700 private sector empty homes. This represents 1% of Falkirk's housing stock and is actually lower than the national average. I welcome the work on the consultation on empty homes, the tenant satisfaction survey and the current allocations review, but most importantly, a domestic abuse policy specific to housing. The first 3 are all items that will inform council going forward, and the latter providing support to a very vulnerable section of society. Significant co-benefits of interventions to improve housing conditions and poverty can save lives, reduce disease, increase the quality of life, reduce poverty, help mitigate climate change and contribute to the achievement of a number of our sustainable development goals, in particular those addressing health and sustainable living areas. Housing is therefore a major entry point for intersectoral support to ensure that the best outcomes for the people of Falkirk. Collaborative working, cohesive strategies and policies to develop this strategy are the mainstay of our housing department, and I have no hesitation in proposing the recommendations as laid out in section 2.1 of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, happy to formally second, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Again, as we have no amendment, I will now turn to colleagues to see if they wish to make comment on the fact there's no amendment available.
No comment.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they wish to say? No. Okay, in which case we're happy to agree the report.
Agreed.
Okay, we move on to item 6, which is the Strategic Housing Investment Plan. And again, I'll open it up for questions on that to officers. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I've got two questions again. Given that grant funding has reduced and less homes can be supported via grant, how are decisions reached on what projects are supported or not?
Okay, thank you, Natalie.
Through you, Convener. We have applied a scoring matrix working together with colleagues in planning, and this includes specific information such as the property type of the development, the location, the demands, and very importantly, deliverability. We need to make sure that projects that are in the plan are going to be able to be delivered. Thank you.
The second question, how are we equipped to be able to respond and adapt the ship throughout the plan?
Through you, Convener. The ship has always been flexible and agile, and no more so than last year when we faced significant reduction and we're quite quickly able to reprofile the programme and the spend. This is something that officers monitor very closely throughout the year in terms of project developments, working together with our SLs, so that as things change, we are able to respond and perhaps bring things forward or delay things. So we have proven to be and are able to be agile. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Nimmo, Councillor Redmond and Councillor Bundy. Councillor Nimmo first.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of questions, and again, officers have had sight of them in advance. How can we possibly meet our 5-year housing plan when our housing budget has been slashed by 26% by the Scottish Government?
Through you, Convener. Thank you. So there is a need for us to ensure that we are seeking out other funding streams, and that's something that we are actively doing, both for our developments and assisting our RSLs to do so. We have also, you'll see from the ship, that we have accessed and utilised commuted sums in future years to offset some of the grant reduction. And we are looking at ways in which we can deliver things as effectively and as efficiently as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. The next question is in relation to 8.3 on page 167. Can you maybe just confirm what delays are anticipated in relation to our new build projects? And if land charges are delayed, what impact will this have?
Through you, Convener. So there are specific programmes that have been moved on to the shadow, and that means that they're not necessarily delayed, they are sitting in future years. That does mean that the receipt for the land purchase will not be available until such times as the project starts. So we do keep dialogue open with our colleagues again in place, and we will actively look to pursue the transfer of one of our developments that is on site soon, which is the Denny High School site. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. I suppose the first question I was going to ask was, obviously we've heard a lot about the £6 million, but could you maybe just describe how the council uses the money that were allocated from the Scottish Government's National House Building Strategy and how that enables house building?
Through you, Convener. Yeah, thank you. So the grant is referred to as the resource planning assumption, and there is formula and criteria set by Scottish Government, which means that each individual unit, each individual home can attract a specific amount of funding. That is the way that the council new build programmes are provided. They also help to offset the costs of the whole development. In terms of the buybacks, there is also a sum that is applied to each unit And as you'll have heard me refer to earlier, we are in discussions to look at an uplift for that actual amount. Thank you.
Thanks. So is it, I think before somebody had said that around 25% of the cost of the new build was met by the grant. Is that the case?
Through you, Convener. At the moment, the figures are, I don't have the figures to hand, but I can find out in terms of what that ratio is. Thank you.
Thanks. And then my next question was, how much on average are we spending on a new build home to build it from new?
Thank you. Through you, Convener. We're looking at around 250,000 per unit at the moment.
Thanks. And then just obviously, you know, we're not being able to confirm if the 25% figure is correct or not, but if that was correct, a £6 million reduction, that would be around a loss of 100 additional homes that we're not going to be getting anymore.
Through you. So that's for that particular year. The projects that have been removed from the SHIP, it's not necessarily that they won't be developed, but they have been moved into future years for future years funding allocation. Thank you.
Thanks. And then just my sort of last question, obviously we've had the housing emergency declared. What steps have been taken since the housing emergency has been declared to, you know, build more houses and increase the housing stock?
Sorry, there must be too many. Come here. Thanks. Well, as Natalie had said, we're looking at reprofiling. There was an additional 40 million made available by Scottish Government, and that was targeted to the 5 local authorities who were most at risk with homeless, and that's your bigger cities. We did receive, I think it was 750,000 of that money that we're looking to reallocate to similar properties and look at building more. Is there a quick fix to this? Absolutely not, and that's why we're doing some of the measures that I spoke about earlier. There is different roads, as Natalie says. It's not just about council new build, it's about other options going forward as well. So that's where we are at the present time, Councillor, and what we're doing, and as best as we can deal with the housing crisis as at present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. I just wanted to clarify £250,000 for a new build, because the figure that I've heard previously was higher than that. So has the cost come down?
Through you, Convener. It varies from each development, and I think it's worth highlighting that the point in time at which these figures were secured may well have been post or pre-pandemic when we have seen the rise. So it is extremely variable across the property type and the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Last week it was reported in the press that the Chief Finance Officer of East Dunbartonshire Council said that the requirements for new build homes in terms of standard energy efficiency is pushing costs up to unsustainable levels. I was just wondering, what is the view of the council regarding the new standards and the financial reality of them?
Thank you. Through you, Convener. So there is a significantly higher cost attributed to meeting the energy efficiency requirements that are needed for our new build developments. What we do have at the moment, those sites that we have planning permission for will receive the gas installation. So it will be beyond in future years where we see the additional costs in terms of the new build, but we are enhancing the energy efficiency standard overall through all of our existing stock and new builds. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just a final question. Taking into account expected costs of installing this energy efficiency, instruction, inflation and reduced budgets, is this deliverable? Through
you, Convener. No one can say what's going to happen in the future, but what I can say is we are aware of what we can forecast the costs being, and we will continue to work with what we have. What we have at the moment is a project that we believe to be deliverable, but you will have read and noted the risks that are identified within the report. Thank you.
A quick follow-up on that. So that's deliverable on the projection of flatline cash from government.
Through you, Convener. So as you'll have seen from the report, we are basing our forecast income on what we have just now, and that is what has been indicated from Scottish Government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. You stated that each new build will cost £350,000 per unit. Does this include solar power, heat pumps? Is it fully adapted? Because £3,500, I would imagine, to the general public there will be gobsmacking.
I think maybe that wasn't an inaccurate figure, but I'll let officers explain that.
Through you, Convener. That's not the figure that was quoted. It was 250,000, but what I can confirm that all new builds will meet the legislative requirement and housing for varying need. It will meet energy efficiency requirements and housing for varying need standards. Thank you.
Solar panels and
At the moment, sorry.
All properties meet the current legislation, Councillor, which does involve solar panels at the present time, and any new bill going forward will require energy efficiency, as stated earlier.
Yeah, the rules and regulations have changed, we're aware of that, but will it include heat pumps?
Sorry, Convener Frears. I think it will have alternative types of energy efficiency heating, so it can be heat pumps, air source heating, but it will meet the required legislation, Councillor.
Okay, Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. It's a question to Kenny. I don't know if you will have this answer, but you can certainly forward on to me. Could you tell me how many new builds there have been under the current SNP administration? And could you tell me how many there was under the previously Labour-led administrations?
Sorry, Convener for yourself. That's a hard question, so Natalie's going to answer that. But unfortunately, I've not got that. But happy to pass that on and make members all aware of that. Apologies.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Councillor Kerr. Sorry, apologies. Bailey Kerr. I've been calling you Councillor all morning. Apologies.
That's fine, Convener. That's fine, Provost. One or two, my questions will be easier, I hope. What standard is our new builds? I know there's gold, silver and bronze standards. So what standards are our new builds? Probably the ones in Hall Glen and the ones at Torwood.
Through you, Convener. At the moment, they are bronze. It's worth noting that there has been enhancements and there is funding available for different aspects of the build as well. Thank you.
Okay. With regards to our RSLs, I know that there's 6 or 7 different RSLs that we as a council work with. Is there any place where we can go and find out where these properties are?
Do you, Convener? Yes, I can provide that information for you.
Because when you get an inquiry, you're going to speak to them, you're going to our in-house officer, it's not a day with us, and it's very difficult to get a hold of RSL's housing officers. It's a generic email, and whether you get them back, an answer back is a pie in the sky. So if, I don't know if you have contacts for who we can contact, because it is an issue.
Through you, Convener, can I clarify, is this for new build projects? No, it's for existing stock. Yep, we can certainly identify contacts for you within the RSLs and provide that to members. Thank you.
Because they didn't give their email addresses. You've got to go straight to a generic one. But thanks very much, Natalie. With regards to the RSLs, I've seen the report and they say they do the buybacks. How they manage to buy backs? Are we fighting, but are we against them to get buybacks back?
Through you, Convener. No, our buybacks scheme is specifically for ex-local authority properties. And we have one RSL, it's Paragon Housing Association, that has a target of 5 buybacks per year. Thank you.
Right. So what properties do they buy back? Any property?
Through you, Convener. It's, again, Paragon Housing Association properties they would be looking to purchase. Thank you.
On the investment, what size of properties are the council looking to buy, build? What size of properties are we looking for?
Through you, Convener. So the honest answer would be all, because there's a need for all. However, in terms of our priority and growing need, we know that that is our larger family style properties, which is 4+ bedrooms, and also fully wheelchair accessible properties. They are our 2 key priorities. Thank you.
The only reason I'm asking is because the 1 and 2 bedroom properties, if there was a legislation came for the UK government that I didn't agree with, regarding if you're staying in a property, I can't remember the name of it, but you're staying in a property in bedroom tax. If we were to offer, in fact, we've not got enough properties to offer people to go into smaller houses. So that's the reason why I was asking. And page 187, available commuted sums on the table 7. Are these one-off payments and what are they for?
Through you, Convener. The commuted sums are in relation to part funding the project due to the shortfall that has came in from the resource planning assumption.
I might need to explain that a wee bit more, Natalie, if you can.
Okay, so are you asking what are we using the money for, or where do we get it from?
Both.
Both, okay. Through you. Okay, so firstly, where we access the money from is through our what we refer to, you may know as developer contributions or commuted sums, and that's part of the Section 75s and the housing policy that brings that money in, identifies how much money that is. That is often ring-fenced to particular geographical areas. Therefore, there is a need for that money to be reinvested back into housing in particular areas. The other aspect that what I refer to as the pot of money, that also includes empty homes levy, and that is what has been also used to provide the assistance to help meet the financial costs of our new builds. Moving on to how that's spent, because we were ambitious and very keen to maintain the programme as is, we have applied the use of these sums, which we are able to do to offset the costs so that we can afford to build. So it's really making use of all of the resources we have available the best way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably My last question on page 200 of the report with regards to the Gypsy Traveller site in Falkirk. I know it's well used. We're saying that we didn't envisage any increase in demand. Are all the properties that are there up to the standard that we need?
Through you, Convener. We have continued to enhance the site, both externally and internally, and we are satisfied that they are meeting the standards required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I got a hard question, so Kenny would need to answer it. But
Convener, they were very hard. It's just that Natalie's better. Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Natalie.
Okay, thank you. There's no further questions that I can see. Therefore, I'll go to Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Convener. I've deliberately asked questions on finance and how it affects the ship. As council officers are predicting that the grant will not increase in 25-26. I hope they are wrong on this, but with the former Labour Shadow Chancellor grilling a Labour government minister on the requirements of the Treasury for a 10% cut in capital to all departments only 2 weeks ago on Good Morning Britain, I have serious concerns. The ship by its nature has to be a flexible plan that will try to react to the changing financial conditions. This is borne out in 2023-24, where our annual allocation of 12.55 million, but we exceeded the grant spending last year, taking it to 13.6 million, as our officers secured funding not used by other councils' allocations. It also has to understand the needs of our people, and I believe that this plan does both of these. Last year with our RSL partners, we delivered 210 affordable homes, including buybacks and shared equity properties. Moving forward, the SHIP plan is to meet its target of between 180 and 220 affordable homes on average per year for the term of the plan. We will work with our RSL partners to deliver 586 new affordable homes in the next 5 years, which will have 141 ambulance or wheelchair homes, 31 4 or larger bedroom homes to support the needs of the people. However, that may increase in the latter years of the plan. The consultation should support and a requirement for mid-market housing and shared equity housing, and therefore there are 66 houses of this tenure included in the SHIP. Additionally, there are 257 new affordable homes included in the SHIP through private housing sites. These, combined with the buybacks, show that every option is being considered to deliver these new homes in Falkirk. For those that are not aware, there is always a shadow programme in order that no project gets lost, and if the financial position improves, officers can accelerate projects where time allows. Tying in with the council plan to support stronger, healthier communities, we will be providing very good, affordable, quality housing that meets the needs of our tenants, who will in turn make them into homes. The homes being well insulated with triple glazing, solar panels, and have reduced carbon ongoing emissions. In addition to this, the prohibition of the installation of direct emission heating systems for projects where a building warrant has been issued after the 1st of December 2023. The developments will have a whole life carbon assessment in conjunction with the Energy and Climate Change team. I could not have imagined 20 years ago, and I welcome these measures and the quality of these properties. I have visited a number of our developments across the council area and have been impressed by the works done by the contractors and, importantly, by our professional teams. There are potential financial challenges, but our housing team, as you have already heard, will use every bit of drive, determination and innovation that they have to deliver the best results on housing investment. This strategic housing investment plan will deliver quality homes in the Falkirk Council area that will have reduced carbon emissions to make wonderful homes for our tenants. I'm happy to move the recommendations in item 2.1 to approve the SHIP 2025 to 2030 and for it to be submitted to the Scottish Government. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Bouse. Councillor Sinclair?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Happy to formally second.
Okay, thank you. As we have no amendment, I'll do as I have done, give opportunity for our colleagues to indicate any comment in the report.
Thank you, Convener. We are obviously most concerned about the fact that the Scottish Government has cut £6 million. That's 39% of the budget for this plan, according to the figures in the report. Now, in that set of circumstances, it is remarkable that our officers have been able to come forward with the proposals. They have adapted the SHIP to come forward with the proposals that they have. In that context, we don't have an amendment to the proposal, but we do have significant concerns. And I would just point out that that cut came at a time when there has been no reduction in the budget that the Scottish Government has from Westminster, contrary to what is being suggested.
Okay. Anyone else have any particular comment? The only thing I would say is there was maybe no reduction, but there was also no inflationary rise from Westminster either. Okay, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Councillor Spears, but we've moved on. We've just agreed the report. But I gave you opportunity, you didn't indicate. So I'm moving on. We've approved the report. We'll move on to the housing annual assurance. I'm sorry, but we've moved on. You could have indicated in another way, but I've moved on. Housing annual assurance statement. Any questions in relation to that? Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, Convener. And this isn't meant to catch Kenny or his staff out at all, because I didn't give them prior notification of this question.
I'm sure they'll cope.
Kenny, just in relation to 8.1 on page 248 regarding the conclusions, it mentions that we've met most of the requirements, but I believe we've missed out in category 4, 5 and 12. Can you maybe just confirm what we're doing to prioritise these areas of work, because they are serious areas? It relates to the gas safety checks, the smoke alarms and the electrical safety checks. Are these going to be classed as emergencies now?
Convener, I could say it's a hard question and give it to Natalie, but I'm happy to answer the question, Convener, through yourself.
I've got to give you some work to do today.
Thank you kindly. So the gas safety checks, as the figures say, we missed one last year. It's still a fail and it's one too much, and I'm not trying to minimise that because we require it to be 100%. In regards to our smoke links, it's 61 there. We're now less than 20 now. The majority of these we're working with partners through health and social care due to other health and wellbeing issues to gain entry to houses. But if it does come to the point, we will look to take legal action to gain entry to do that. And that's from, in the previous past, we were sitting at hundreds that were out with that. In regards to the Scottish Housing Quality Standard, you'll see that's an improvement before. It's about the 5-year electrical. I did say it previously, even last year, it's going to take us 2 or 3 years to get up to that. It's the one part that stopped us meeting fully our health and safety targets within our housing quality standard. Other than that, as you heard earlier, energy efficiency and things like that is way above the industry norm. So there is a programme of works that are ongoing to bring that up, and next year members will see a significant improvement in that as well. The other outcomes that's laid in there that we're looking to impact was the homeless, and I'd already mentioned that earlier in my statement in regards to unsuitable accommodation. We're trying to do that through the emergency means that we've put in place, Councillor.
Councillor Nimmer, could I ask you to use your microphone, please?
Oh, there we go, it's back on again. This is obviously the third housing report we've had on the agenda this morning. Can I ask you just to pass on our thanks to your staff for all the work involved in relation to bringing these forward? Okay.
Councillor Spears.
Thank you. At 1.2, you say the report and linked evidence support the council plan of supporting stronger and healthier communities. But on 5.6, you say we did not meet our full regulatory requirements for the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. Could you fully explain the divergence in these two comments in this report?
Okay, I think that was kind of answered, but I'll allow that to go forward.
Yeah, as previously mentioned to Councillor Nimmo there, the one area that we're not meeting the full Scottish Housing Quality Standard, or there's a couple there, one would be the smoke detectors and the other the electrical safety checks. With the smoke detectors, it's the individuals that we're working with that are restraining us for getting in to make that. It's not that we've not got the resource to do that, so that's an issue, but we are working compassionately to make sure that we can do that. And with regards to electrical checks, we've targeted all vulnerable first and foremost, and then thereafter looking at available resources, which has been the biggest issue. And when I mean available resources, it's not financial, it's getting people out there to do the job for us with the change in legislation from 10 years down to 5, Councillor.
Could you expand on the word vulnerable? Who do you think is vulnerable here and who do you think's not vulnerable?
There is, convener through yourself, there's various definitions on that. It's people who need additional support what I would class as vulnerable, and we'll target that, or people who ask for help when required.
Okay, Bailey Kerr.
Thank you, convener. Probably leading on for Councillor Nimmo's question regarding the answer you gave, Kenny, regarding one gas check and electrical check, and we have got a measure to get these done. Are any of them health and safety issues?
Convener for yourself, when you mean health and safety issues, they're not imminent. So, i.e., if the gas, we've done it, it's not that we've not, we just missed the target. The smoke detectors, they have smoke detectors there at the present time. They're just not interlinked, which is the required upgraded standard. And the electrical checks, everything's okay, everything's working. They have the type of electrical boxes that will go to it. However, it is required just to make sure that nobody has either an earth came loose or something, just to make everything as safe as possible. So okay. That would be the one area.
Okay. And my last question is on page 259 regarding damp and mould. I'm sure I'm not the only elected member in the council that has inquiries, constant inquiries about damp and mould. And all the constituents get told us, keep your windows open, keep stuff off the radiators. I understand the advice. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. Because I'm only mentioning it because the requirements on target it's saying.
Convener for yourself. Industry standard as that is the majority. There is times when that's not the case. We spend a considerable amount of money on additional work, rock works and things like that, where it's not been caught early enough, where people have had things like you said that has increased that. We go with advice from specialists on that. It's not something the council thought, but this is national advice and direction. And we will also support individuals through our housing officers and other agencies where that's required as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. I'll go to Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Convener. For the third time, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear me for the last time. Fair doubt. Okay. Well, you will enjoy this one. In comparison to the first two reports, this one is slightly shorter, but no less important. This is an annual report and details the compliance with the Scottish Housing Charter for tenants. Following on from the pandemic and then Brexit, there have been significant challenges in terms of workforce. Inflation and high interest rates and the returns ended up with returns from the tenant satisfaction survey that were lower than officers or members would have liked. But Kenny and his team have delivered what he has been promising, and a return to very positive outcomes to the overall satisfaction, quality of tenants' home, and belief by our tenants that their rent offers good value for money. Over 93% for one and over 96% for the other two, as laid out in the report. The survey was carried out by an external body with face-to-face interviews of 1,000 tenants. This is not us marking our own homework. It is a positive depiction of the service and the standards we offer to our tenants. The building of stronger communities and satisfaction of our tenants has always been our priority, and that does not finish because someone had been given a home. We have a low turnover rate of houses, and people maintain their tenancies because they are overall satisfied with the quality of service from our housing teams. When people are happy in their homes, it supports many facets of their daily lives. There were items which we were not fully compliant, but actions are in place to take them back into compliance by 2025. And as a point of note, the gas safety checks had zero outstanding by the end of the financial year to bring it into compliance, although it missed the reporting period. This does not happen by accident. It is the professionalism of our entire housing team that delivers these exceptional services. And I would reiterate the beginning of the three reports, thanking all of our staff for all of their efforts. The Senior Auditor has written on the assurance information supplied by the service and has provided substantial assurance category on the completeness and accuracy of the performance. With that, Convener, you'll be pleased to hear I am happy to remove the recommendations in 2.1, and I'm sure Councillor Kerr is as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Sinclair?
Yeah, happy to formally second.
Okay, I open it up to any comment from our colleagues in relation to no amendment.
I would reiterate the thanks to the officers who have brought forward these three very detailed and very useful reports, but we have no amendment.
Thank you. Are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, I'm going to take just a 5-minute comfort break, and that'll allow changeover of officers. So if people want to get themselves a coffee, but we'll keep it very brief, and I hope we'll be able to get through the next 4 items probably by around 1 o'clock. Okay, colleagues, if we can come back, please. We're now on item 8, which is the climate change update, and we will open this up for questions to officers. I've got a couple of questions here which I'm going to ask to begin with, and Mr. Kentrick, appreciate that the targets are extremely challenging and that the timescales are ones that are also always going to have to be something we need to keep an eye on. But what are the key areas that we need to progress, and what are the barriers that you see that we need to try and overcome?
Convener, I'll start off and I'll maybe bring Claire Gibson in to add anything further that she feels appropriate. The key areas that we've obviously progressed so far have been waste, fleet, and the rationalisation of buildings. As we move forward, waste is very much done because we're now sending everything for to be recycled or to be used to generate energy. Fleet will continue to be a focus as one of our largest emitters as we green the fleet. But after that, the biggest challenge is property. And there is 2 ways or 3 ways actually to how we can reduce our carbon footprint in relation to property. One is we close buildings, which deals with our own organisational carbon footprint. The second is we improve our building assets to make them more energy efficient. We look at installation of renewables. And the third one, which is actually behavioural change, how we use our buildings. Everybody knows if they drive past certain secondary schools at night, the lights are all on. We need to be starting to get light sensors, turn them off, and making sure that our behaviours and how we use our buildings are appropriate. I don't know if Claire has anything else to add, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Claire, do you wish to add anything to that?
Nothing else to add. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. If we had a blank cheque, how much would we be spending to meet all these targets as laid out?
Convener, I think that's probably an impossible task to quantify realistically. We have set out within the report a number of costs that would certainly get us on our way to achieving those targets. But clearly, as things move on, I think we had said that we were needing to invest £60 million to decarbonise the operational estate. That was in 2020. As things move on, we've rationalised some, so you think the cost may have come down, but then again, costs have risen in terms of construction, so we need to go back and do that. But I think at this stage, the short answer is it's likely to be £75 million plus, and that would only deal with the operational estate. There would still be investment needed in relation to fleet and other activities that the council undertakes. But they're just very, very rough estimates, I would stress.
Thanks, Paul, for that answer. So, for area-wide emissions, taking it all into account, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. And I think I say that because we do have ambitious targets, but it's important to have those figures in mind so we know what we're working with and balancing that with the actual money that we've got to reach these targets.
I would agree. It's good for us to have some quantification as to what we can do as an authority, which is our emissions. I think when you look beyond ourselves to the area-wide emissions, that becomes extremely challenging, clearly because of the just transition, the industrial complex we have, is indeed some of our more traditional industries or homes or things like that we have to deal with that are not necessarily all within the council's gift. That will probably be in the billions as opposed to hundreds of millions, just given the nature of particularly the complex. But again, you know, if there is anything that we can obtain that has that information, I'd be more than happy to provide that within our reports. I would just want to make sure, though, that there was a robustness to it. At least that was a best guesstimate. Happy to research that, though.
Thanks, Paul. And a final question. Those buildings which are currently going community asset transfers, if they are taken over by a community group and not operational, That would count as a Scope 3 emission, aka out with the council's remit, but still contributing area-wide.
Kavira, yes, that's correct. What I would add to that is that a number of the community groups that we have seen move towards community asset transfers are identifying energy efficiency works and securing enabling funds and using the council's enabling funds through the CAT to actually match fund. Just last week we signed off on Scottish Power Energy Networks investment of £168,000 for Bonnybridge Community Centre, and we're looking for those works to be undertaken next year. And again, that will basically reduce their energy consumption significantly.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Okay, I have Councillor Redmond, then Councillor Patterson.
Thanks. I'll just start with how close are we to having an all-electric fleet?
Convener, apologies, I don't have that figure, but I can certainly obtain that quickly and get it distributed to members.
All right, thanks.
Okay, Jack, if you just hold a wee second, I think Mr. Binney wants to come in.
Thank you, Convener. Just to say, in terms of the heavy vehicles, that isn't where we're going, because at the moment the technology isn't there. So that's where we're using the kind of biofuel to take down the emissions. But yeah, which has made a massive impact. But in terms of electrifying that, the heavy vehicles, we're not really looking at that at the moment because we haven't seen a technical solution that we think's reliable, sustainable, or affordable.
So I suppose maybe a follow-up question to that would be, do you think diesel and petrol vehicles will be phased out of our fleet within the next 3 years?
I don't imagine that in the next 3 years there will be green solutions for that heavy fleet. I think that's going to take longer. So no, we will still be using normal or fossil fuel vehicles, but as I've said, because they're using the biofuel, there's a 99% reduction in the emissions. So actually the net impact at the moment is as though we were using a green fleet. It's just that we haven't gone completely green.
Right, thanks. And then my other question was, obviously there's a lot of money going into a sort of tree planting, and there's going to be a fourth climate forest. Do we know whereabouts this will be planted?
Convener, I'll pass to Claire Gibson on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So we've had the fourth climate forest and funded for the last 2 years. The Fourth Climate Forest have carried out some research within the Falkirk area, identifying land holdings, and we'll be having a discussion in the very near future about where the potential planting sites in the Falkirk area are. They've already identified that in Stirling and Clackmannanshire councils, and they have started tree planting there with I believe 1,100 hectares already planted. It's just Falkirk. We've identified it, and they're going to look at the sites in the future, and that will be discussions with the Energy and Climate Change team and other colleagues across the council.
Yeah, that sounds really good. My sort of follow-up questions to that would be, sort of how many trees would be looking at planting, and would it be native trees? Would be looking at a sort of diverse range of trees as well to sort of rebuild their habitat as well. Obviously there's been kind of concerns recently in my ward about loss of ancient woodland and things, and that's going to take thousands of years to get that back, but I'll just ask you that about the native trees.
Yeah, through you, Convener, the types of trees will be identified as we go on in terms of the suitability of these trees for those sites. In terms of the numbers attributed to Falkirk Council, I can't say for certain that number. The total number across the Forth Valley area is 16 million. That's a target over the next 10 years of the project. So we've got since we've done 2, we've got another 8 years to go. So total would be 16 million. But we do have a meeting of the partnership on the 6th of November. So there possibly is a question there of can they quantify the numbers that the council will receive?
And then just my sort of final question around the trees. I was reading how trees can be quite
Again, through you, convener, I suspect that we will do it as a strategic approach. So it just really depends on where the land availability is. So Falkirk Council does have land, and there's other landholders as well, and whether the willingness to plant these trees on these sites. So there can be discussions had in terms of how we link that up for flood prevention, perhaps linking into the wider Grangemouth flood protection and supporting that project as well.
Perfect, thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, my computer today woofed. Just a couple of real quick questions, hopefully not too difficult, Claire. I mean, first and foremost, it goes without saying that it's so encouraging to see the work that Falkirk is pushing ahead with, and seeing what we can do locally, you know, despite the pretty disappointing backdowns from the Scottish and the UK government. I think it's encouraging, and I hope more councils are taking a leaf out of this as well, and pushing forward. Can you just elaborate briefly, though, in terms of tree planting? I know that there's a lot of interest from the public as well, and not to say they're free labour, but you know, people and communities are really keen to invest in their own communities. So I was just hoping that you could maybe highlight publicly today how people, what avenue they would go down if they wanted to be involved in tree planting. And secondly, I was just hoping that you could also elaborate on what kinds of work is being done to link in with local establishments. So again, my favourite example is the Sustainable Thinking Scotland up in Kinneil, because like I say, there's so much amazing work that's already going on locally. So how are we tapping into that to make sure that we can maximise the benefits?
Thank you. Through you, convener, in terms of, I know communities are really keen to get involved with tree planting. It's you know, a really good project, and I know that from our perspective, we've contributed some volunteering days last year to plant trees in the local area. There is a community element to the Fourth Climate Forest, and this will potentially be pushed forward should they receive future funding. So there might be opportunities there to, when we're looking at areas within Falkirk to plant, getting our communities involved, and we would probably put out a call to action from communities. But as it stands, if there are community groups that are interested, they can certainly get in touch with my team in the first instance, and that's through our climate change inbox. So climatechange@falkirk.gov.uk. They can certainly get in touch, and we can try to liaise with colleagues and set something up. In answer to your second question, in terms of linking up with these groups, we are exploring the potential to create an external stakeholder working group. Our recent the first climate festival in Falkirk that we held on the 28th of September, we identified that there are a number of groups such as, well, Forth Environment Link and Climate Forth that are working in the same space we are. There's opportunities to join up there, and we are looking at the potential to create an external stakeholder working group to ensure that we work collaboratively across the area.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to seeing how that develops. Thanks, Claire.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. Paul, just a quick question in relation to our electric vehicle fleet. Can you maybe just confirm, if possible, how many we currently have?
Convener, the council currently has 161 EVs within its fleet, and more have been purchased. The following have been purchased. There's 8 EV tippers, which will replace diesel, 4 box vans, 3.5 tonne diesel vans they replace, and 2 EV vans to replace existing diesel vehicles. And as Malcolm highlighted, we've also got the HVO trial, which is ongoing.
Now, I don't expect you to have these figures to hand, Paul, but would it be possible to get an idea of what sort of annual mileage these vehicles are doing?
We'd be happy to provide that information, Convener.
Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. I have two questions, one on forestry and trees. Has there been a figure factored in for tree maintenance? We have problems in Grangemouth town centre with the trees now bursting up the monoblock pathways and causing tripping hazards and all sorts. Trees are fine, but it depends where they are and it depends if they're maintained. I think you just need to drive down Abbots Road in Grangemouth and look at the leaning trees on the Burnside, where there's real fear that it might rip out the flood defences that exist at the moment. My second question is regarding the fleet you spoke about earlier. Has the Civic Tesla been cost effective?
Convener, I'll deal with the questions in reverse. I'm not privy to any information that would suggest that the Civic Tesla has not been cost effective, but I'd be happy to provide information on that from colleagues in fleet services. In terms of trees and them being planted, where we make a capital investment of any kind, whether it's trees, property assets or fleet, there is always revenue consequences factored into that for their ongoing maintenance in the future. And in terms of trees, traditionally they were planted without any root barriers, which would reflect the nature of the tree. That's now partly part of the course that goes in place to prevent the exact circumstances of monoblocks and walls, etc., being damaged where they're in close proximity to any plant.
No, it's just I've asked for years now for the town centre tree management, as the street lights are now ineffective because the trees have grown so big and it's so dark at night. It's quite dangerous with the tripping hazards being caused.
Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. The climate change target is very ambitious. Will we achieve it with the funding we've got? If no, where will we get the funding from?
Convener, as outlined in the report, we're way on our way to achieving a reduction of 75%, which is good, and we will get there. We have enough projects and programmes in place where we feel we're confident we can achieve that. On the wider area emissions, we've clearly highlighted what we can do to get progress towards that. It is very challenging, and I think, as we've highlighted in the report, that cannot be achieved without huge investment. In terms of where that investment comes from, that's probably a wider discussion in terms of how local government's funded and how climate emergency is funded and that whole thing. And that's way beyond the scope of this update report.
Okay. Will all our buildings be compliant and meet emissions by the time the target comes in?
In terms of achieving the 75% reduction, the answer is yes. We will be well on that way through the operational estate. In terms of the wider target, the answer is no, without that substantial investment that's identified. We will make good progress, and there's lots of things we can do. Behavioural change costs nothing, and as mentioned in the report, we're going to be having a schools energy challenge to try and reduce energy consumption. Schools are our largest buildings, particularly our secondaries, where we're undertaking a lot of works to improve them also, which are cost effective, but there is substantial investment needed. So the short answer would be is no, we won't achieve that target without the substantial investment.
I'm glad you mentioned the schools, Paul, because as you know, I know you're doing a report on the schools at the moment, or have done it. And we've 14 schools that's over 100-year-old, so it's trying to get them on board to meet these targets will be very challenging. My view is, loads of elected members have mentioned the fleet. I'm comfortable with us using the diesel and the petrol with the subsidies that we're using. Me personally, I would rather invest in our houses, get the windows and doors in, to bring our housing stock to comply, than going all electric straight away. But that's just my views. And on the tree planting, I'm glad we're taking a strategic view on where we're going to plant the trees. Because no,
Councillor Kerr, have you
I'm
got a question?
going to ask a question. I'm going to ask a question. So, when these areas are identified, Claire, will local members have a insight to where they are? Because I don't know if it's the last tranche of trees, but there were trees planted, what, a stick some elected members got because the residents, when they didn't have view of that beforehand.
Thank you. Yes, we can keep members up to date in terms of if the tree planting has been identified in the ward areas. We can certainly keep members up to date. We can also do that through briefings to all elected members to say these are areas where the tree planting has been identified, and if you wanted to get involved in any way, shape or form with that planting, then you can certainly let us know.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benny, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Convener. I just wanted to clarify that the investment that goes into the fleet wouldn't be able to be reallocated to the council properties, because that would be an HRA responsibility. So it's, in our view, impactful investment, and it's also investment that's been approved by the council on an annual basis when the capital programmes come forward.
I totally understand that, and having said I totally understand. Just my personal views that we'll get more benefit personally than in the doors and windows than they would.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to ask a further question because we were talking about behavioural change and schools challenge. And I just wondered what your views were on our young people becoming more involved in that, because I just reflecting on having attended the COP26 and the amazing debates that our young people had at all levels, talking about local level, Scottish level and that international level. Their understanding is probably far greater than potentially any of us in this room, but they can play a key role in that behavioural change, but also how they will be involved in the schools challenge.
Yes, Convener, you'll know there was the successful summit which all our pupils attended, and I think yourself was also in attendance, and we have entered into an agreement certainly with the pupils to look at a number of areas of activity that we can engage with our young people to improve the impact of our activities collectively on the environment. And indeed, I'm just looking at it at the moment. Article 1 is more accessible recycling, opportunities to grow food and buy locally, accessible public transport, organised litter picks. If anybody wants to volunteer, will be appreciated. Investment in renewable energy, which is obviously one we're looking at biodiversity and ecosystems, reducing plastic use. All of these relate very much into aspects of behavioural change, and I think it's credit to the young people and the colleagues for getting on board and looking at a collection of activities we can progress. So I think there is a strong voice from the pupils, and it is being heard.
Thank you for that. Claire, you wanted to come back on that?
Thank you. Yeah, it's just to add that we have been running some sessions with schools on the Energy Challenge to support them going forward. We've done a number of sessions with another 3 back-to-back tomorrow, and we notice how on board the pupils are. They're really keen, they're really excited, and we're starting to foster that competitive spirit. So we are looking forward to seeing how this pans out, but there's definitely support amongst the school pupils for that challenge, and some really fantastic ideas in terms of encouraging behaviour change coming through. Thank you. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener. I've got a question about community growing strategy. I mean, obviously this is a hugely important report. It's very wide ranging, over and above the recommendations, and there's lots of questions that could be asked, but specifically on the community growing efforts. There's also a lot of passion within many of our communities, not just from our younger generation, but from some of our more, I don't want to say more senior members, but different generations, and interest in community growing, allotment space, etc. And I've recently become aware, as I'm sure others in the committee have, about problems in terms of the strategy that we've got in council about identifying space and groups looking at that space and then kind of trying to develop that. That there seems to be some strategic level problems there, where the different processes are not really aligned in terms of what we're identifying in our plans, and real survey of those areas and the planning process. And I wonder whether officers could see whether they're looking at some of those problems that have come to light and maybe trying to review to help that situation out.
Convener, I'm not aware of those specific challenges that Councillor Murtagh mentions. Obviously, allotments and open space falls without my general remit, but we're clearly working with colleagues on community growing projects, particularly where they impact on our climate emissions and our use of our wider property assets. I'm happy to take any issue and discuss it with colleagues and opposite counterparts in the senior leadership team to resolve any issues that maybe arise.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that. I think it's just, and I will take things offline, but I think it's important that our communities feel that that the situation where if they're identifying in plans, if we are putting out to them in plans that this is where they could potentially look at, but actually those areas when they're looking at that they're not suitable at all, and they go through a long planning process. So I would appreciate, I know it's not a question, can I apologise, but that there's some looking at that in terms of our overall climate change strategy would be really helpful. Thank you.
It's my understanding that we're actually a growing officer short at this current time, from my memory, so that may well be why things aren't going as smoothly as we'd anticipated, but we'll leave that with officers to look further into. Okay, there are no further questions. Now I understand that Councillor Deacon's struggling for a voice this morning, so I'm going to go to Councillor Garner to move the report.
Thank you, Convener. And yes, my colleague Councillor Deacon has lost his voice a bit, so he's asked me to talk to this report. And as always, I wish to say a big thank you to Claire and her team, and obviously Polly's taken to this little duck to water in a relatively short space of time. And obviously need to mention the work that's been currently undertaken and is going to be undertaken. The recommendation in this report are designed to support Falkirk Council plan. The SNP administration brought forward a climate emergency action plan back in February 22, which the council voted unanimously to support, and this required an annual update to the executive. On the climate emergency action plan, the climate change team, along with wider council, have made an ambitious but achievable target of reducing emission, working a just transition in Grangemouth and greening our fleet, which has been mentioned in a few of the questions. Some of the updates of our fleet include Falkirk Council currently have 163. Yes, they must have bought another 2 or 3 vehicles yesterday in the fleet. This accounts for approximately 34% of all vehicles. In 2023-24, the council reduced the amount of diesel used by vehicles by 191,000 litres. This was offset by an increase in HVO of 128,000 litres, which produces 90% less emissions. There was a net fuel reduction of 59,000 litres in 23-24, providing both an environmental benefit and fuel saving cost. As a result of the additional electric vehicles and increased use of HVO fuel, the council fleet emission was reduced by 21% in 23-24 as well. But our fleet is not the only place we are seeing changes. Within Waste Services, now sending waste to the Energy from Waste plant in Grangemouth. This has made a significant change to our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. The EFW plant produces 95% less emissions than sending to landfill. While a lot of this report is for noting, there is one recommendation we as elected members need to approve, the Forth Climate Forest, what we've heard alluded to as well. This is an amazing project, is looking to create a green canopy corridor throughout central Scotland between Falkirk, Stirling and Clackmannshire councils. To create this canopy, FCF will need to plant 4 million trees by 2030, and as Claire said, 16 million in total. The planting of these trees in our area will be beneficial in both offsetting emissions and reducing the risk of flooding from heavy rainfall. This is a great opportunity for Falkirk Council, and I'm happy to move this report.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Deacon, do you wish to second?
I formally second my report, and thanks to Councillor Garner for presenting it for myself.
Okay, thank you. I will open up to our opposition colleagues to give explanation in regards on any amendment, because we have no amendment before us today.
We have no amendment, just thanks to the officers who've brought this forward. I would just say that the targets are clearly ambitious, but the climate change emergency is of great concern to a great many people, and it's important that we do try to achieve ambitious targets.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. We again have no amendments, but as our questions make clear, we do have concerns about matching the financial costs with what we have and how we're going to reach these ambitious targets. I think it would be better to focus on reaching targets within our resources, but doing that with a holistic approach, and going back to Bailey Kerr's point about reducing energy use by putting funding into doors and windows of housing compared to the council fleet. I understand that the separate budgets, but I think in the short term it would be a better investment to be on reducing energy consumption rate compared to alternative energy sources. The reason I say that is because the technology is changing all the time, and even the energy car market is unstable at the moment because of different factors, which I won't go into here. So rather than investing in heavy capital up front on cars, it might be better to reduce energy and improve living standards elsewhere. And I think this is the frustration that I've had about climate change reports, plans, strategies by all levels of government in the UK. It doesn't seem to be holistic. It seems to put everything into sectors and say, you do this and you do that, but we don't talk to each other and we don't come round with one big plan. And I think the council does have one hand tied behind its back because of that national debate and the lack of cohesion within that debate. But I think regardless of that, this is a good report going in the right direction, and just be good to have that clarity about the funding, and that maybe looking at how we can do a more holistic approach on climate targets and reducing energy, knowing that there are different things by law, by budgets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Spears.
Thank you. Certainly my group welcomes this. The Central Scotland Forest Trust have already planted over 4 million trees, and another 4 million will help us get to our zero target. My only concern is we at the thinnest part of the green belt between Falkirk and Grangemouth now have a dual carriageway going through the middle of it, and we need to honour our heritage lottery funding, that we maintain walkways and cycleways for people to transverse through this green belt that we're so hard trying to protect.
Okay, I remind people it's a brief explanation about why there's no amendment. It's not a debate. Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, I don't have an amendment because I think it is a primarily a report for noting, and I think that there are many things we need to make more progress on and accelerate on, and I just think it's welcome. We're welcome to be changing the things which are in our control, like renewing our fleet with EV vehicles, etc., because that is something that is within our scope. So I very much welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we happy to agree the report? Right, thank you. Move on to item 9, which is no place in politics tackling abuse and intimidation. This was a subject of a motion to council, which was agreed unanimously, and it's about the next steps. I'll firstly open up to ask if there's any questions. And we have Mr. Perry, who's going to take any questions. I'm going to start, Brian, by saying obviously the scope of the Joe Cox Commission is very broad. And a lot of it is beyond what is within Falkirk Council. But would you say that something that we want to be able to do is look at something very practical by way of changing culture and indeed practical actions we can take and to ensure that everybody feels safe and comfortable in the job that they have to do?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for the question. Yes, exactly that. I think there are practical measures we can take, whether it's briefings, advice or training. And as the report says, we want to look at it in a local context and talk to local members about their experiences so that we can be proportionate in whatever we come forward with. But yes, absolutely, practicality will be the key.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, totally welcome this report, obviously, and I think it's the right thing to take a bit of time over it and not rush in just to make it a tick box exercise. Looking forward to working cross-party on this issue, but I think I would be asking Mr. Perry as well, what steps are we taking to work across councils, because, you know, we're not alone, and what we're facing here is obviously across all level of politics and all councils. So just really looking to see how we're going to lean on other councils as well and learn from maybe what work they've carried out, as well as wondering, are we having our equalities officers wearing this, presumably, because as we're acutely aware that it's often women and minorities who are at the focus of a lot of abuse and intimidation in politics. So is there going to be a special focus group looking at, you know, women and minorities specifically?
Thanks. Yeah, as you say, these are issues that translate across the whole of Scotland and indeed the UK. I'm aware of other councils have reports and there are work streams. These are being pulled together through the Scottish network of member services administrators and with COSLA. So we're hooked into that, and I've been speaking to COSLA and what they're planning to do. As I understand it, they're planning to produce an equivalent document to the Debate Not Hate document that's referred to back in the motion and in my report. We produced in conjunction with COSLA through the Scottish councils and with Police Scotland. So there's a national look at this and we'll absolutely be hooked into that. In terms of equalities, yes, any officers that are relevant will be brought into the working group, but I don't think there's specifically a work stream. You were talking about a working group. It would just be as part of the general work that the sounding board are doing with the Chief Governance Officer.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Perry. Looking forward to seeing it progress.
Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. I know this is to bring a soundboard and bring a group forward. What policies have we got at the moment that cover for elected members for tackling abuse and intimidation?
I suppose the main one that jumps out is the lone working policy, but I think part of the work is that we need to look at council policy and council practices that we have in place for staff to see whether they're adaptable to elected members if they currently aren't. So looking at occupational health and looking at counselling schemes. So there's a broad range of things, but what we need to do is pull them together, just look at all these policies to make sure they do apply to elected members.
Okay, Mr. Moody's going to come in as well on that.
I think just to add to what Brian's already said, and it's absolutely right in relation to the specific question, on the question of the broader culture and civility aspect of it, we do also have the Councillors' Code of Conduct at the moment, and that, as the report says, that will be another important strand that will come through. I think the examination of the issues by the group and how better we can actually bring that more to life within the way in which council meetings and other general interactions within the council are conducted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Moody. I don't think the code of conduct for the elected members is what I was trying to get at. I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room or online who the last year has taken abuse because of some of the decisions that's been taken at council. So what I'm asking is, what protection has elected members got with regard to that?
I think that's one of the issues we just need to look at more closely. And some of that may be a recognition that we won't have a control over everything around about that. So I think a lot of what Bailey Kerr is describing is taking place within a social media environment. So there will be issues there about what scope the council has as the responsible body for intervening in that. But I think those are issues that will be teased out further in the discussions to come.
A lot of this happen on social media, Mr. Moody, but it does happen face to face. So I would just like to hope that going forward, that the policy or what we're trying to look at takes into that into consideration. Thanks, Convener.
I think it will take a whole host of things into consideration, and there'll be various things that we'll be able to tap into that will be able to support elected members as part of it. Councillor Buchanan. Sorry, Bailey Buchanan.
Fine, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fine, thank you. I'd just like to reiterate what Bailey Kerr had said. The fact is that the major problem for abuse and intimidation actually comes from social media, and we brought it up with officers in the past. But obviously, how do we legally then try and enforce issues in relation to this, and I'm glad that you're going to be looking at that, because members in the past and probably in the future, because the decisions been making, it doesn't matter whether it's at a committee stage or whether it's a full council, that we're subject to tremendous abuse that can affect not only the elected member but also the family. And I'm sure that a lot of the members here have had to put up with it. Could I ask you at this stage, Convener, is this an opportunity now to put forward like an independent member for this board?
Officers will put a call for that out after the meeting, Councillor Buchanan. We'll just rather than, it's not one that we'd normally nominate at the meetings. We'll just ask people to nominate afterwards, because it may well be that people have to take it back to their individual groups.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Spears, you had a question?
Yeah, questions have already been asked.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. I think the question is that whilst it is true that people on social media and in person can say things which aren't constructive, and to put it mildly, where do we draw the line between free speech and opposition to a view which is maybe badly articulated and something that would be seen as a threat to an elected member?
I think that's something that the group would probably look to have a debate around, and I think that there's an element whereby elected members maybe need some help, support and training about dealing with certain situations and what they can do to give them the confidence to deal with them. Because you're absolutely right, we can't stop free speech, but I think there'll be quite a debate within the sounding board about how we take that, and hopefully we'll get a consensual way forward. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Just sort of on the point of social media and other things like that, I think it would be also useful if officers were able to come forward with some guidance for councillors in respect of what is actually unlawful, because there are some things that are illegal, and it might be useful to have some guidance on that as well.
Brian, and I do wonder, again, this is getting into the realms of what the actual group, but I think there probably is potentially a social media type guidance and policy that we could take and adapt for elected members. But again, that is really into the realms of the discussions that we need to have.
Absolutely. I think we would be looking to have some sort of guidance along that, and I think it's about we can't control the public, but we can control our messages and how we react to it. So we need to look at that, and perhaps going back to something Bailey Kerr asked, there is a engagement strategy being developed that we're coming forward as well. So that will tie into some of the work which the group looks at.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think.
Convener.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Bailey Buchanan.
Thank you, Convener. Just one quick question. I'm listening to what Brian's saying there. It's fine. In terms of this sounding board, will it be possible then to bring external individuals on, just say for instance like the police, to ensure that we're getting as much support as possible? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be up to the group to decide who it wants to speak to, but I don't think there's any barriers to who the group can approach. And the police are in contact. We do work with the police. I think members are all aware that Police Scotland provide safety briefings to all members across Scotland through a webinar every month. But yes, we can see if we can hook in with them locally if that's what the sounding board wishes to do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there's much to be said in relation to this report. I think it was something that was very positive that came forward for council and looking at ensuring that elected members are safe and being able to do their job and comfortable. I think we need to make sure that we get the balance right. There's external factors that has been said that we can't control. And it's about how we deal and react to that. But there's also some real practical stuff that we probably can do to improve the safety and the comfort of elected members in doing their job. And that would be the piece of work that I think through the sounding board. So it's not a policy development, it's a sounding board, which is very different to be able to develop. So I'm happy to move the report as is. That we move forward to that, and as I said, the next steps would be for each of the political groups and the independents to nominate a member for the group. Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Convener, and happy just to formally second.
Thank you. Happy to agree.
Agreed.
Next slide.
Sorry, I was just waiting for the opportunity to say why I had no amendment. Sorry, excuse me, I think I've caught what Councillor Deacon has. It was just to say that I think on the whole, partly because it is a very good report, and it also within it references a previously very good report that was done in response to another motion, and indeed in that report it references previous work that's been done by COSLA and National. I think what the we always get into a bit of a group therapy session in these debates from councillors, but it shows that we have a lot of work to do, but also that in the past a lot of work has been attempted. and nothing really changes. So I suppose the reason I don't have an amendment is because I think I'm positive about what's going forward, and that the scope of what we can then input into further recommendations. But it does have to be said that you know, we all need to go forward into that group in the spirit of actually achieving something, or else we'll just end up in the same place we have for many other times. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. So everybody's agreed. We'll move on to the capital programmes update. I'll open it up for questions at this time. Okay, Amanda, could I ask just a wee bit of, it says in the opening paragraphs that there's still a number of uncertainties and risks in delivering on the capital programme. Could you maybe say a wee bit about those and the potential risks that are associated with that and delivering on our capital programme going forward?
Yes, thank you, Convener. So I suppose that there's two sort of significant risks that impact on either deliverability of the capital programme or affordability of the capital programme, or both. One is around inflation, and we know that we've seen inflation come down. There was a question earlier on about construction inflation. I think some of the projections for that are a little bit more uncertain, but also what we're seeing is obviously that high inflation that we've had is now baked into our costs. So even if inflation slows down and reduces, we've still got those higher costs baked in. So that sort of leads on to the second issue to some extent as well, which is around interest rates, because interest rates are based on, in part, what the inflationary position is. We have seen that interest rates reducing at a much lower rate than we expected. Sorry, a much slower rate. There has been some news reports that might improve and that might pick up a little bit towards the end of the year. But equally, the issues in the Middle East particularly could impact on some inflationary areas such as prices of oil and things like that. So it feels very uncertain and very volatile at the moment. We were of interest. We were going to go out to do some borrowing this week, and the gilt rate jumped up, and that impacted on our borrowing. And that so these are the types of sort of issues that we are navigating. The Capital and Treasury Manager is looking at interest rates on a sort of twice daily basis to check some of the movements. But I suppose those are the two key factors that are impacting either on deliverability or on affordability.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions to officers? No. Okay. Obviously, Amanda's just highlighted some of the challenges and the risks there that are going to continue to be predominant over the particularly short to medium term. But what we have to do is be very, very clear about the slippage in the project management, which has been maintained over a sustained period now, despite the challenges. That's really positive to be able to see that we've managed to contain the slippage from going any further. It would be easy at a time like this to start to be very negative about our capital programme and what we might have struggle with in the future. But what is important is that we are still delivering on £67 million within our general capital and 57 within housing. This includes the preparation work in relation to the sports facilities at the Braes, Denny and Bo'ness, along with other key projects such as Westfield and Champney, and as well as the groundwork for in and around the new town hall. Also, we've just spoke about the various housing reports that have come forward, but particularly around our new build and the investment within our existing stock, that programme still continues, and that is really beneficial and very visibly able to be seen to our communities. And it's something that we should be continually highlighting and celebrating, as well as a number of other smaller capital programmes that are still taking place and are very visual within our communities, such as the play parks, etc., which people actually welcome and note. So I don't think it is, as this is still early in the year, I don't think there's any real concerns that come out of this particular report, but we do have to be mindful of the wider economic climate. But glad that we're able to look to progress things as much as possible. So I'm happy to move the report as it is. Councillor Bowes.
Can I formally second, please?
Okay, thank you. Okay, any comment in relation to no amendment?
No comment.
No. Okay, if there's no further comment, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, thank you. Move on to the last item, item 12 now, which is the hard FM services to our 4 secondary school sites. And I will open it up for questions to officers. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. I have a few questions. First of all, with the PPP contract coming to an end, what condition are the 4 schools in?
Convener, the schools are satisfactory condition and they're also satisfactory in terms of suitability, but they are 25 years old, so their condition, wear and tear and their suitability reflects that, but they are satisfactory condition and they are statutorily compliant.
Thank you. The next 3 questions are sort of tied in anyway. First part is sort of have we considered bringing everything in-house? Have other councils used this approach that we're looking at now? And how will we demonstrate value for money through this approach?
Convener, we're the first PPP schools project coming in-house. A number of authorities already have hard FM contracts in place. West Lothian, for one, have one that covers their non-PPP schools, the partnership centres and civic centre and service centre, and that has worked fairly well for them in terms of delivering value for money and the quality of work that's been undertaken. A number of other authorities for elements of their estate also have these hard FM contracts, and particularly down in England with some of the smaller authorities. In terms of the demonstration of value for money, the route we are going through is the Crown Commercial Services, which has a number of major contractors on it who have established supply chains, and that competitive tender approach will ensure we demonstrate value for money.
Thank you. Just one small one in the back of that. Another one is the 4+1 option. Could you expand a wee bit on that for the years of the agreed contract?
Convener, it's 4 years as the standard term of the contract, and then there is the option to extend for a further year. Our market information and from engagement with Crown Commercial Services is the investment that the contractors need to put in place with their supply chains, as they need that longevity of contract, and 4 years is the optimal length, and clearly that gives us the opportunity for another year's extension if we're required to do so then.
Just to say thanks to Mr. Casey, that answered them all pretty well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. The difference between class of 98 and PFI schools, could you fully explain, because there's a lot of people listening, you want a hard facilities management service. Are we saying some of these facilities, on whichever side they fall, aren't being properly maintained and facilitated?
Convener, no, the contractual agreements for the PPP contracts that date back to 1998 clearly set out what the maintenance obligations are, the responsibilities for statutory compliance, and also the requirements in terms of soft facilities management, janitorial, caretaking, and aspects like that. This contract will take over when the PPP contract expires in August next year, and we will be bringing in-house the caretaking and the cleaning aspects because we are well resourced and well versed in dealing with that. The hard FM contract, though, is a much increase in the capacity demands that our current maintenance and technical colleagues would require. And at this stage, with the challenges around recruitment, the capacity of us to do that means that a hard FM contract's the most optimum route for us to go to sustain the condition of these assets in the longer term.
Thank you for that. Seems to be a blind corner over there for the hearing of the sound. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. The CMO, the contract monitor officer, do we know what grade and salary this would come in at? Or will that be later on when we decide if we're going for in-house or no in-house?
Convener, we're currently actually at the grading panel stage at the moment. The job has been specified. We will have requirement for contract managers going forward. Just that's the nature of the business we are in. It will be a professional grade post, but at this stage I couldn't tell you what the exact grade is. That will be subject to the grading panel review of the job description.
Okay. And my final question is, with regards to the current specification that we've got with the contractors, do we envisage saving money?
Convener, it's well versed that the costs and the prices of works and the management relating to PPP contracts are high. We are expecting to be making a saving when they come back in-house, hopefully both through maintenance and hard FM activities, but also through the wider that we won't be paying the loans charges and the management fees, which are also associated with the PPP contracts. So once we actually go to tender, which is this process, that will advise us what that maintenance cost is on a similar basis to what we currently have, and then that will identify the level of saving, or that will finalise the level of saving that we'll achieve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keswick. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. You've explained what you mean by soft facilities management services that we would be taking in-house. I wonder if, for the sake of transparency, you could kind of identify what the hard FM is.
Convener, the hard FM is the general maintenance of the building. So, you have cleaning and general janitorial services as the soft part. The hard part is what we would traditionally do: maintenance, cyclical works, planned improvements. So it's the fabric of the building, the mechanical and electrical installations, and the general maintenance of the buildings, in effect.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions. Councillor Garner?
Yeah, there's not much you can say on this report.
Sorry, Councillor Spears again.
It's just, with the general public now using the swimming facilities and sports facilities, I would imagine that the costs will increase because of the greater wear and tear and cleaning facilities that will be needed.
Most cases, the general public were already in the schools.
Convener, I was just about to add that the public already have access, as do the swimming clubs and groups have access to the pools. There is already cleaning regimes in place, and the intention is that those cleaning regimes will transfer over at the end of the contract into our in-house provision, and we would be hoping that we continue to provide the same level of service, or indeed better if we can.
Okay, Councillor Garner.
This time. Yeah, I've not got much to say in it, just to thank everyone for their questions and obviously thank the officers, and I'm happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to formally second. Any comment from others that wish to?
No further comment necessary.
Okay, we're happy to agree. Okay, thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of this morning's executive, and we have made it just before 1 o'clock. So thank you, everybody, and hope you have a nice rest of the day.
Thanks to the chair.
Thanks to the chair.
Thank you.